Hello and welcome back. Maybe now you'll be able to hear me better. I said hello and welcome back. Okay, now last time we left off, we were basically echoing out strings onto a local PHP server over here. So if I go visit this is what I got. Let me recap this very quickly for you. So this is a normal HTML document that we turn into a PHP document by just calling it index.php. Between the normal HTML tags like h1, paragraph, unordered list, and list items, I have, instead of just putting in the text, I have chosen to enter PHP mode, then echo out hello world. So anything between the PHP tags, so angle bracket, question mark, PHP, this is PHP code, then question mark, angle bracket, this is the end of the PHP code. So this is what we learned until now. Let's continue watching the tutorial and see what we learn next.
All right, at this point, you've learned how to successfully echo out a hello world string. But yeah, what we've done here, well, right now, you'd be forgiven for thinking, but why? What's better about this versus what we had at the beginning, where we simply wrote hello world as the content of the h1 tag? And of course, you're right. At the moment, we're just getting used to PHP. We're shaking hands. And if you think about it, we've already learned a handful of important things. First, we can open a PHP tag like this, and then we close it at the bottom. Anything between that opening and closing tag will be interpreted as not HTML, but PHP. So we've also learned that when we work with PHP, we can mix it within any HTML document, and that's somewhat unique to PHP. Next, we've learned that if we want to prepare a string and display it on the page, we can use echo, and then we place the string within quotes. Now, those quotes could be double quotes, or they could be single quotes. We can talk about the differences later. But then lastly,
I prefer using double quotes because as we learn a little later, I think in single quotes we can't use variables, so double quotes are more powerful that way. I think this segment is called variables. Maybe this is what he'll teach us now.
We've learned that we end a command with a semicolon. Think of this almost like a period for writing English. When you finish your thought or when you finish the sentence, you conclude it with probably a period or something like that, some kind of punctuation.
Yeah, so as a beginner, this always would get me worked up, the semicolon. I would almost always forget, especially once if I've been programming for a few weeks in Python, then I would just completely forget to add the semicolon. After a day or two, maybe you get used to it. So if you're like me struggling, just hang in there and know that it'll become muscle memory within a couple of days.
Well, within PHP, we complete a sentence, so to speak, with a semicolon. All right? But now in this episode, let's talk about how we can combine things, or concatenate would be the proper term. For example, what if instead of world, we wanted it to be somewhat dynamic? Maybe it could be universe, maybe it could be town, maybe it could be folks, whatever you want. So let's remove that. And yeah, in many languages, we use the plus symbol. We would do things like this, hello plus world. But yeah, you'll notice in PHP, it doesn't like that. Wrong string concatenation operator. In PHP, we use the period. So yeah, this is the term we use, concatenation. We are going to concatenate hello with world.
So to explain this in a different way, concatenation is nothing but adding two strings together. So this is a string, which means a sequence of characters. If you want to join this and this, so hello internet, I would say period, how are you? And I'll add a space over here. Let's see what happens. See, it concatenated, it joined the two together. There were two different strings. This is the second string, this is the first string. what happened was it echoed both of them together. That's what concatenation is. It's just a fancy way of saying joining two strings together.
Okay, let's leave it like that and see what we get in the browser. So I'll switch to the terminal. If your server isn't still running, let's boot it up, like we did in the last episode, and then view it in the browser. And yeah, we get the exact same thing, but now we have a new piece of syntax that we can work with, the concatenation operator. So now we can swap this out on the fly, universe, and we get hello universe. Maybe hello everybody, switch back, and that works as well. Okay, cool. Next, let's make the greeting itself dynamic. Maybe instead of hello, it's hi, or what's up, or anything else you can think of. All right, let's do it a little bit differently though. This time, we're going to create our first variable. We create a variable by using the $sign and then any number of characters. So if I really wanted to, what we have here could be a variable name. It's not a very good one, but it would work. But in our case, I did say the word greeting, right? So I think that's a good name for the variable. $sign greeting equals what? Well, in our case, why don't we make it equal to hello? So I will say hello. Okay, and I think I'm done. But what do I put at the end again? What is the punctuation for a piece of logic? Once again, it's a semicolon. And again, in your head, just think of it sort of like a period. I am finished with this piece of logic, so I conclude it with a semicolon. Okay, so now I have a variable called greeting that is equal.
Let's try that. Okay, I'm going to simplify this, so I will comment these out. Again, I did that with control / on my Windows computer in VS Code. That's the default shortcut. So I'm in PHP mode over here. So I want to declare a new variable. Okay, let's go. Let's call the variable greeting equals namaste. Do emojis work? I think emojis should work. Let's try this. Okay, namaste world. So over here, I think we just learned about, oh, I forgot the semicolon again. Let's go with this greeting and concatenate that with world. Okay, there's some funky business happening over here where the PHP mode is not commented out, but let's see what happens. Okay, namaste world, it works. So this is commented out, but my formatter is still choosing to show me this. So let me just get rid of it. I like keeping things simple. Okay, so I think this is what he'll teach us.
To the string hello. But if I switch back to the browser, there's no difference here because I haven't used that variable anywhere. Okay, let's swap it out. So now let's select everything here, and I will replace it with our variable name. And let's see what we get there. It'll be close, but not quite. Yeah, notice I get hello everybody as one long string or as one long.
So this is something else that would initially, when I was learning to program, especially in my JavaScript days, that was one of my first programming languages. This would get me all caught up all the time. So what I would do is add extra space either at the end of here. So for example, if this was hey, and this was just one word, this is what will produce exactly the same, pretty much the same error as this. There's no space over here because the computer won't want to add anything. It just says just combine hey and world. There's no space between hey and world. So what I can do is add a space over here. There you go. Or over here. And that's pretty much the same. So what I would prefer to do is add a space over here instead. That's just a personal preference. I don't know if it's the right way to do it. sometimes what I would do is have an empty space to be more clear. Concatenate. So this should be a space. This will produce exactly the same response. Are we in the 2y zone yet? I think we're in the 2y zone. Okay.
Word. And that would make sense if you think about it. Right now I say echo out greeting, and then no space, and then everybody immediately after it. So we could do this in a couple ways. Of course, I could just do a space right here. And yeah, that would work. But maybe everybody will be dynamic as well, or that will become a variable. So another option would be to concatenate a space and then concatenate the rest of the string.
Correct.
So now I'm echoing out whatever greeting happens to be, and then a space, and then everybody. Switch back, give it a refresh, and yeah, we get the exact same thing. So now you've learned about variables. But you know what? When I originally learned this, I think my first thought was, once again, but why? Why create the variable? Why is that better than echoing out the hello string like we had in the last video? And the answer is, sometimes the variable will point to things that you don't have control over. It might refer to something the user types in. It might refer to something that comes from the database. It might refer to something that you're going to manipulate in some way.
So I'll just dive a little bit deeper. I know we haven't reached databases yet, but typically in most web applications, that's how it would work. So there are different kinds of databases. One of the popular ones is something like MySQL. If you followed along this video and set it up, I think that's what you did. You set up MySQL database. There are others as well. There's Postgres, there's MongoDB, there's different kinds of databases. So it'll say something like a command for, let's say, fetch me something from the database, and then it'll be over here. So that's what they're suggesting. So it could be, for example, a weather API. So I'll give you an example. I'll undo this first. I don't know why this is showing me a red line. Let's see if I change something. I did. Okay, let's debug. Oh yeah, empty string. Sorry. There you go. Okay, so let's, okay, I was going to give you an example of how we do this on a database, okay? Let's go with PHP mode. Now over here, it's do something to get the current weather. And over here, it'll be something like user input. Do something, or rather ask user for their location. So it could be something like a drop down, or permission to access the device's location, something like that. Okay, now then it'll say echo now rather it'll say echo the weather in user. In fact, look, I'll just say location is weather. So I'm going to use this as a string. I think you can do curly braces if I'm not sure, but so because I'm not sure, I'm going to just choose normal concatenation. Something like this. So this is what we'll get. For example, weather equals get weather from an API or database somewhere. Location equals what I just suggested over there, users input, for example, and this is how you would do it. The weather in color. I don't know if there are undefined variables, what will happen. Let's see. Oh, cool. So because it's undefined, there's nothing in there. The weather in nothing is nothing. Interesting. Glad we learned this together. Okay, let me delete this.
Maybe the user provides a string of characters and then you change the capitalization or you tweak them or you do something that you couldn't do manually or statically. That is the reason for a variable. And trust me, if that's confusing, it won't be confusing in a week or so. All right, so now to finish up, as it turns out, there's actually a couple different ways we could write this. And I think you'll find this is true for programming in general. Often for any given task, there's a handful of ways you could approach it. And often each of those ways will generate the exact same thing in the browser. So there's no difference for the end user. But for you, the programmer, you could write it in a number of ways. For example, instead of using concatenation like we've done here, another option is to store the whole thing within double quotes like this. Greeting, space, everybody. Okay.
Interesting. So that would have worked as well. This is so much better. Oh yeah, I think this works because of double inverted commas, but it will not work if we just use a single inverted comma. If I'll say howdy, sure, will it work? Oh yeah, it did work. But if I change this to a single inverted comma, yeah, it doesn't like that. Let's see if it still works. It did not. Cool, so for this to work, I'll need a double inverted comma. This is cleaner. Let's go with this. I like this. I think in Python these are called F strings, formatted strings. And I forget what they're called in JavaScript. I think they're backticks. So in JavaScript you could just use this instead of this or this. So something like that. Let's see.
Now, if I come back and refresh, yeah, once again to the end user, there's no difference. But for you, the programmer, you've changed the code slightly. And this is referred to as refactoring. That is when we tweak the code without actually changing the end result for the user. We've tweaked it to be more accommodating to what you consider to be clean or attractive or appropriate or efficient or fill in the blank. All right? So now we've learned something new here. We've learned that even if we have a string, we could store and evaluate a variable within it. But now here's the catch. If we instead use single quotes, did you notice how my syntax highlighting changed? That was a little hint. Now we don't get what greeting evaluates to, we get the text itself. Okay, so now we can see there is a difference between using single quotes versus double quotes. And that difference is if you want to nest and evaluate a variable within a string, you have to use double quotes.
Called it. I might have seen this video long ago, or maybe I learned it from Jeffrey somewhere else. But yeah, I kind of always prefer to use double quotes in this sort of situation in strings.
Switch back, refresh, and now it works. All right, good job. Onward to the next lesson.
Okay. That's it. I think I'm going to end this stream on just that note. That was variables. This is PHP